The 2024 NFL season is upon us, which means it's time for both Joe and I to make our bold bets for the 2024 season. Here's my bets here today in the AFC here on Locked On NFL Scouting.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, usually joined by Joe Marino. Not today. He's in Bills training camp. I'm down in Miami for Dolphins training camp. And since we each have unique schedules this week, Joe and I decided to divide and conquer here on Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We appreciate all of the everydayers who do keep it locked in here on the Locked On Network because we don't just say it, we live it when we say it's your team every day. If you're a fan of an AFC team, you're in luck. We're doing AFC bold predictions for yours truly here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Today's episode of Locked On NFL Scouting is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The playoffs have wound down. The sports stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we did this last year, and it was a lot of fun. Joe and I independently break, and we each come up with our own list of bold predictions for the 2024 season, one for each team. It's intended to be a bold bet. And that's important to remind you as we get into some of these for each individual AFC East or AFC team today. NFC will be tomorrow. But we're looking for bold predictions. And then Joe and I on Friday are going to get back together, reconvene, look at each other's lists, and we're going to pick which bets of each other we want to take each other up on, and see who has a better record at the end of the year with bold bets and success and failures in hitting on those. So it's kind of a competitive week for us. You want to come up with bold predictions, but bold predictions that you don't feel really bad about. If Joe calls me out for on Friday and says, hey, you said this about the Steelers, I'm going to take you up on that. And I know I have no chance of getting right. So bold predictions, we're going to start in the AFC North, speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then we'll do the AFC East, the AFC South, and then the AFC West. Figured we'd give the AFC North a little bit of a glow up since they had, for the first time, all teams with winning records this past season. Highly competitive division. And that made it a lot of fun to sit down and kind of ask myself, okay, where are the margins for you to find some bold predictions, but not so bold that you're going to sit here and rake yourself over the coals for them. So let's start with the Baltimore Ravens. This is a team that was the 1 seed in the AFC playoffs last year. A little bit of turnover on the offensive line, a little bit of turnover in the skill group, a little bit of turnover on defense. So there's a lot of reacclimation for Baltimore, but their marquee investment was Derrick Henry. And because of that, and it feels appropriate, it feels like there's Derrick Henry bold bets on this show every year when we do this. I am betting that for Baltimore, Derrick Henry sets the single season rushing touchdown record in 2024. That record is Jamal Lewis with 14. I will take Derrick Henry at 15 or more on the rushing touchdowns. When you consider how effective Gus Edwards was carrying the ball last year and in years prior as a physical back who could pound short yardage and get in the end zone, and you consider Derrick Henry's there, and I think there's more home run hitting ability even at his age. Yeah, I think that's a nice bold bet to take. The second place team in the AFC North was the Cleveland Browns. And this one's not necessarily bold from a performance perspective, but it is bold based on historical perspective. The Browns, I am betting, will win 11 or more games for the first time in consecutive seasons since 1947 and 1948. That was like the AAAFL or something like that. It had been a long time since the Browns have had consecutive 11-win seasons, and I think they do win 11 games this year. I think that defense with Jim Schwartz at times can be totally smothering, can be elite. Believe they were the NFL's top EPA per play defense last year. The offensive side of the ball, I think with that performance on the defensive side of the ball, all you really need is above average quarterback play. You don't need superhero Deshaun Watson, Michael Jordan-esque type performances where he gets kicked in the eye and rolls out and throws touchdown passes. So I think the rest of the team around Watson gives you a floor where I do think this is a team that has double-digit wins. And for the historical magnitude of 11 back-to-back years, that's my bold bet for the Cleveland Browns. Now, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was a rough one for me because you don't want to ever bet against Mike Tomlin to have a winning season, and that's the low-hanging fruit to say, oh, well, this is the year they got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields at quarterback. I went a different direction. Pittsburgh has a Week 10 bye, or they have a Week 10 bye, Week 9 bye, and then they play the Commanders in Week 11. My prediction is the Steelers are going to finish the year 2-6 in their final 8 games. And the reason why is they play all 6 division games, and then they play at Philly and home against Kansas City. So you have 2 against Baltimore. You have 2 against Cleveland. You have 2 against Cincinnati. You're at Philly and Kansas City. That's closing the season for Pittsburgh. Now, I think their early season schedule is still quite winnable, a lot of games. I wouldn't be surprised if they did finish with a winning record. But I just look at 6 division games at Philly, home versus KC to close the season for your final 8 games. And I say, man, like I'll bet bold that stretch does not go well for Pittsburgh. Oh, Cincinnati is another team who was challenging for me to find. And my bold bet is not necessarily anything that's out of the norms of their performance with individuals or a team, but it might be surprising for this stat to manifest itself just because of other performers across the rest of the league. My bold prediction for the Cincinnati Bengals is that Joe Burrow is going to lead the NFL in fastest time to throw average this season. And he's been for his career about 2.5, 2.6 seconds. He has historically been a very fast trigger. There's fast triggers elsewhere in the NFL. I don't think and I think with the wrist injury and Joe getting back from that and some of the losses with the skill group, we'll see what the running game ends up looking like this year. They have always used the passing game as an extension of the running game. Losing Tyler Boyd, I think Joe, to mitigate hits, help keep himself healthy to some degree, is going to quicken his process even more. And I think that will yield the fastest average time to throw in the 2024 NFL season. So that's the AFC North. Now we have AFC East and South coming next. We'll start with the East and the reigning East champion Buffalo Bills. That is next here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Make sure you stick with us. We all love sports. It's why we're here listening to the show or talking on the show. We love them so much, and it can be a little difficult when the sports wind down in the heat of summer. They don't sports the way we want them to, but FanDuel keeps the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Over in the East, this is a bold bet, and there's a little bit more in the way of player production with some of these bets. The North ended up being a couple of team bold bets, but Buffalo, I'm swinging big with Dalton Kincaid. I'm betting Dalton Kincaid joins the 1,300-yard club in 2024. That might not, you say, oh, well, you lost Stephon Diggs. Your receivers are Keon Coleman as a rookie, Dalton Kincaid, Valdez Scantling, Chase Claypool, like Curtis Samuel. How bold is it for that to be the case? This is how bold it is. Here are the names that are amongst the NFL's 1,300-yard club at tight end. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham. That's it. Yeah, 5 guys. Kittle, Kelce, Andrews, Gronk, Jimmy. I think Kincaid becomes the 6th. That would make half of the 1,300-yard club guys whose last name starts with the letter K. So maybe and Jimmy with a J is right there too. So I just think for Kincaid, what Buffalo you're assuming they're going to do differently this year with the departure of Diggs and Joe Brady. And I think their offense is going to look very different, but they made that marquee investment in Dalton Kincaid, and he was the primary target getter for the team down the stretch last year. The second place finisher in the East last year was the Dolphins. So my Dolphins bold bet this year, and I'm down at Dolphins training camp, full disclosure. That's why there's just a flag and a couch behind me if you're watching on YouTube. Jalen Waddle has more receiving yards than Tyreek Hill. It's a bold prediction. And that's very bold, considering Tyreek's gone for 1,700 the last 2 years. Tyreek kind of downplayed the quest for 2,000 this year. Waddle got off to a little bit of a slow start and then missed the final few games of the regular season, got hurt against Dallas, played less than 50% of the snaps in that game and left in the first half. Did not come back, missed Baltimore, missed the second Buffalo game. So I think had he not gotten hurt, he's probably looking at 1,200 yards. And if he hadn't got off to a slow start, he's maybe looking at 1,300 yards. And those two guys combined for over 3,000 yards in 2022. So there's enough of a track record here that they can coexist and both be supremely productive. Waddle's yards per catch was down last year. So I think Tyreek maybe understanding that this offense is aspiring to be a little bit more well-rounded is important. I think Waddle being back and being healthy, he looks amazing. He's added a little bit of mass, it looks like, playing potentially with a little bit more strength. So I'll go with Waddle more receiving yards than Tyreek this year as my bold prediction for the Miami Dolphins. The New York Jets, the third place finishing team, I'm running back last year's because, darn it, it would have hit. It would have hit if Aaron didn't get hurt. Garrett Wilson, 1,500 plus yards. Write it down. If Garrett gets a full 17 with Aaron, he might lead the league in receiving yards this year. Maybe I'm you know what? I'm going to make that the bet. Garrett Wilson is going to be your receiving yards king in 2024. I'm in on that one. I'll one up last year's instead of just running it back. And then the Patriots. I have Ramondre Stevenson finishes 6th in New England Patriots history in rushing yards for his career at the end of this season. He gets a contract extension with the team. Seems there's a lot of investment there in him. I know that they're looking for some receivers to emerge, and Javon Baker's looked good in camp, and Drake May's had some nice moments, but I still think this team's identity at the end of the day is going to be to run the ball. He would need to rush for 1,300 or more yards, and McCaffrey is the only dude that sniffed that stratosphere last year, so that's what makes it a bold bet. But I do think this offense is going to have to live through its running game, so I have Ramondre Stevenson down for 1,300 or more rushing yards this season, which would put him 6th place in franchise history for career rushing yards as a member of the New England Patriots. That's the East. Over in the South, man, this division is going to be a lot of fun. I think you have to start there. When you consider Houston and the run that they went on last year as a young team and the additions that they made, and Indianapolis getting Anthony Richardson back, and Tennessee spending the way that they did in free agency to kind of totally reshape the face of the team, and Jacksonville, there's some really promising reports out of training camp for their defense. So I think all of these teams have a lot of potential this year. But the team that won the division last year was the Houston Texans. They, of course, hosted the Browns in the wild card round. So we'll give them their shout out here. My bold prediction for Houston is that they run the table after the bye. Late bye, only 4 games after the bye. How bold is that, Kyle? Well, they're home against Miami, they're at Kansas City, home against Baltimore, and at Tennessee. That's bold, right? They're going to win all 4 of those games. Miami, at Kansas City, Baltimore, at Tennessee. Put me down for wins in those 4 games. Now, we'll talk about it in just a little bit, but based on my prediction for the South as a whole, they'll need all 4 games. More on that in just a minute. The second place team was I don't know how tiebreakers worked with Jacksonville, Indy, and all them. So I'm going to go with Indy, the team that played for a chance with the division in Week 18 last year. And my bold bet for them, Indianapolis, is they as a team will eclipse 2,700 yards rushing in 2024. Now, that's Jonathan Taylor doing some heavy leg work. That's the rest of the backfield stable taking some of the workload. That's Anthony Richardson. Baltimore led the league last year with 26-33. So I say Indy gets another 67, 70 yards, at least more than what Baltimore had last year in terms of running the football. For this to happen, Richardson's got to be healthy all season. But that's part of the bold bet, right? Now, Jacksonville, I think they set a franchise record for points scored in 2024. I know the early reviews out of camp have been very favorable towards the defense and not so much the offense thus far. But nevertheless, their franchise record for points in a single season is 417. They've knocked on the door a couple of times with Doug. I think they get above 417 this season with Trevor Lawrence and a remodeled group of skill players. And I think the defense will help them along the way to play more complementary football. So put me down for Jacksonville, 418 or more points scored on the season. And that just leaves the Titans. For the Titans, I have Tony Pollard as the big winner. I know when you consider what they have in DeAndre Hopkins, they spend for Calvin Ridley, they've invested in pass catchers, but they also brought in Tony Pollard. And I think with Will Levis and the scheme that they're running this year, and still some of the questions as far as the maturity, how quickly the offensive line matures, I think you may see more checkdowns or quick throws to the backs as a result this season. Put me down for Tony Pollard, 65 or more receptions in 2024. His career best is 55. I think he tops that by at least 10 this season. And Tony Pollard, turning into a sound investment for the Titans, gets a lot of run from a receiving perspective. Now, we have the AFC West, but then I also have a bonus. We'll see if Joe listens to it all the way through. I have a bold prediction for each division from like a divisional perspective too, not just the individual teams. We're going to get to both of those next here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Stick with us. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which is where you want to get your tickets from when you want to go to the game. Going to the game is not supposed to be stressful, and Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, and prices actually go down the closer you get to first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase. There's no hidden fees. You can see exactly what the cost is going to be before you put the tickets into your cart. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets with the lowest prices, guaranteed. The AFC West. Obviously, the Chiefs, first place, won the Super Bowl last year. You have to start with the Chiefs. My bold prediction here is Pat hangs 50 on the Raiders in Week 8. Before the Raiders, the Kermit the Frog video came out, I was like, maybe the Raiders steal another game from the Chiefs this year. But the Raiders choosing to poke the bear, I am electing to take the low-hanging fruit and say I think the Chiefs have a statement game in Las Vegas against the Raiders this year. So what are the bold bets you possibly going to cook up for Kansas City? Oh, they're going to be 16-1 and be the 1 seed. Oh, Pat's going to pass for 5,000. Would Pat do anything that would really surprise you? So instead, I'll say, hey, Raiders were a very well-respected scoring defense last year. They put up some resistance against Kansas City in the games last year. The best I could cook up for a bold prediction for Pat was 50+ in Las Vegas Week 8. Speaking of the Raiders, I think they do something they haven't done this year since 2010. And that is sweep both the Chargers and the Broncos in the same season. They've come close a number of times. They've been 3-1 in those 4 games, and it was a pain in the butt to do the research and commit to it and go all the way back and find out just how long it was since they did that. But you consider the Broncos with their quarterback situation and the Chargers with what the rest of the roster looks like in the midst of Harbaugh's first season there. And I think this is as well as positioned as the Raiders could possibly hope to be to do that thing they haven't done since 2010, which is sweep both teams. Denver Broncos, I have them down the fewest wins for Sean Payton in a single season in his career as an NFL head coach. And there he was, the years he spent away from coaching don't count because obviously he didn't lose any games either. He's won 7 games 4 times, never less than 7. I would take the Broncos under 7 this season as they continue to kind of reshape this team in Peyton's image. And I know that they just invested in a quarterback in Bo Nix, and I love Bo Nix coming out. I just feel like this is still a team that's a little bit away. They lost their anchor in the middle of the offensive line. Their skill group has a number of injury questions that you don't feel great about. The defense started slow last year, really turned around as the season went on. Will that happen again? They've lost what was going to be a key piece in Drew Sanders already. Put me down for the Broncos to have another transitional year for Sean Payton as he lays the foundation there in Denver, which just leaves the Chargers. And I had a hard time with this team too because a lot of people like their outlook this year. I do think this is a foundational year for the Chargers. I ended up coming up with Khalil Mack is going to lead the league in strip sacks and forced fumbles. He had 5 forced fumbles last year. I believe Bradley Chubb had 6, which was first place. So Khalil Mack, it's a guy versus the field. I'd like to think that's a bold bet. It's not my boldest bet on this list and queue for the Raider or for the AFC, but it's one guy versus the entire field. I'd like to think Joe Marino would qualify it as a bold bet. So that's the South, or that's the West. Now, I want to go back to the divisions and give you my bold prediction for each division, the dynamics with each division. For example, AFC North, my bold prediction is the teams will finish in the same order as last year. Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I have Cincinnati and Pittsburgh tied for wins, for what it's worth. But I have them down same order as the bold prediction. In the AFC East, the Jets pull a Miami and fumble a several-game lead in December to lose the division after a 9-2 start for the Jets. Their end-of-season stretch is brutal. Their last 5 games is really tough. For the AFC South, the entire division, I have the entire division within 1 game of each other entering Week 18, either 8-8 or 9-7. The entire division, which would be really fun because, again, you play divisional games to close the season. There would be a lot on the line for every single team. It'd be fun. And then the AFC West, I have Kansas City wraps this division by December 1st. Extremely early. It's my bold prediction for the AFC West this season. So there you have it. That's every team with an individual bold bet for them. And then each division gets its own bold bet as well. 20 bold predictions for the 2024 season in the AFC landscape. Tomorrow, I'm doing the NFC. Then Joe is doing the AFC and NFC on Wednesday and Thursday, respectively. And then Friday, we're going to come back together and say, all right, here's your bets. Here's the 6 I want to take that you made, and vice versa, so that we take each other up on the bold bet. So it gives us a lot to root for in season, and we love to get our competitive juices flowing as well. So it should be a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys for checking out Locked On NFL Scouting. It's your team, or teams in this case, every day here on the Locked On Network. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Hope you guys have a great Monday. Come back. See us again tomorrow for NFC bold predictions. I'm looking forward to letting you all know what I have in the queue on that as well. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in on Locked On Network. We're out of here. See you later.